Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chaotic Little Book Corner. My name is Acacia. Today, I am really nervous about this video. I am going to do some spoilers, so I'm gonna let you know that right now. This whole video is going to spoil 4 books. So, I'm going to show you the 4 books, and I'm going to start with the 2 that are least likely to have been read, and then I'm going to show the 2 that are more likely to have been read, which will spoil the ending for the first 2 if you have read the second 2. So if you don't want to have the first 2 books spoiled, period, then click off as soon as I have finished telling you those 2 books. So, The Girl on the Landing by Paul Torday, and Shirley Jackson's The Bird's Nest. If you don't want to be spoiled for those 2 books, you can click off right now. I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So these 2 are more likely to have been read. So by showing these 2, I'm going to spoil the ending for the other 2. But if you don't know the ending to these and you don't want to be spoiled, click off after I show these books. So Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. And this is the one that's going to, spoil everything. This is Robert Bloch's Psycho. So, if you have not read any of those 4 books and do not want to be spoiled, go ahead and click away now, and I'm going to discuss those further. Alright. Is everybody here still interested in being spoiled? Because if you are, we are going to start a conversation. And if you're not, I really recommend you click off this video. Okay. So now we're going to get into spoiler territory. So these 4 books have a theme running through them. All of them address mental health issues and mental illness. There are some mental illnesses that are super debilitating and really, really take the life over of a person and change the way that that person functions to the point where they need to be medicated 100% to function on a day-to-day basis and to live their life in a sort of normal sort of way. I'm talking about people who have hallucinations, visions, auditory or visual, people who have conditions that cause them to have different personality to their core personality, people that have violent tendencies as a symptom, potentially, but not always, and people that have been put into this situation where their disability and their mental illness has been villainized to the point where it's actually feared in society. So, the illnesses I'm talking about, and one of the books, Shutter Island, never really specifies the mental illness that is sort of being used. Now, I could argue that in this book it is also DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, formerly called multiple personality disorder. But I could also argue that it is a more fragmented but controlled sort of idea, as the split in personality is not a split in personality, but a split within memory, and it's a drive to remember things differently than they are, and it's a situation in which memory is altered by the patient in order to cope with reality. So there's that. The Bird's Nest and Psycho deal with DID, dissociative identity disorder, which is one of the reasons that I read them. I definitely have a strong interest in it because it is what I suffer from myself. So I'm always interested to see how DID is represented and how it is put out into the media. And you guys know that recently a movie Split came out, and that was really detrimental to the DID community. It really put out this vulgar, dangerous, scary image that caused a lot of pain and a lot of hardship for those in the DID community. And I don't really like that movie. I have not watched it, but I know the whole story. I've gone over it with my therapist, and I've been asked before if I can morph into a monster. What? If I can morph into a monster. So I'm not I'm not laughing because I think that it's a bad question, because according to Split, I can morph into a monster, but I'm laughing because that's just bad writing to think that somebody with DID can morph into a creature. It's just bad writing. So these two deal with multiple personalities, and then this one, Girl on the Landing, deals with schizophrenia. Now, the thing that these 4 books all have in common is that, alright, here comes the spoiler. The main character, who suffers from a mental illness, murders. And they murder someone in their life for reasons. Now, if you look at these books from a perspective of logic, you understand that all of these books are pointing out that these murders take place because the character and person with the mental illness believes that there's a viable threat to their safety. Each one of these characters believes solidly that the reason that they must murder the person is because there is a viable threat to their safety. Is that inaccurate? Well, yes and no. People with DID have a tendency to respond in a less controlled way to triggers. So a trigger may be as simple as a teddy bear that they really like, and in that case, a younger part may come out and respond in a childlike way. So it is as simple as teddy bear reverts to child part, and then you have a 5-year-old who is completely obsessed with this teddy bear, and you're coping with a person who has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old and verbal skills of a 5-year-old, and they may be able to do things that a 5-year-old normally couldn't do because the body can do things that this 5-year-old normally couldn't do, but all in all, you're coping with someone who now has the mental capacity of a 5-year-old and the same logic as a 5-year-old. So you're going to have trouble communicating with this person because they've regressed. Another trigger that might come forth is the abuser or the person who initiated the initial trauma of a person with DID could come into the room, and that could immediately trigger the switch into a protector, a part that is more based around the idea of protecting the host. And that protector could be aggressive, could be violent, could be angry, could be scared, but overall, the way that media would have it portrayed is every time a person with DID is triggered to think that they are in danger, they kill. That is how media has represented it at this point. And that is false. And then we have the girl on the landing, which is schizophrenia. And they tend to feel that they are receiving messages from either God or a higher power or creatures or animals. They could think they're receiving messages from many different things, and those messages could involve being told to kill someone. It could. Is it always, though? No. Is it going to always happen that the person listens to those messages? No. There is treatment, there is medication, there is a lot of things that can be done to help a person with schizophrenia find a more basis to reality. And there is no guarantee that a person with schizophrenia is going to respond in a violent way. I myself have met several people with schizophrenia. I have not found any of them to be violent. I have found them to be aggressive at some points, but not violent. And I would be aggressive too if I was being told that my reality was false. And I have become aggressive before when I'm having hallucinations and somebody tells me that they're not real. I don't become violent, but I do become aggressive because it really shakes you to your core to believe that your state of reality is false and that you are being accused of lying, of manipulation, of storytelling, whatever it may be that you're being accused of. It puts you on edge, and it can add this level of intense stress to your everyday being. Now, Girl on the Landing, the main character, Mikey, kills his therapist, his mother, and his father. Okay. Why would he kill those people? Well, according to the book, his mother and father were trying to medicate him, trying to put him into this situation, and the therapist as well. They were trying to put him into the situation where he was medicated and he was no longer feeling as if he was connected to reality. His personality had changed, his entire being had shifted, and he was no longer himself and felt really in a fog and really scared, and felt really numb and vulnerable. So according to him, in his logic, these people were trying to manipulate him into being someone he wasn't. And they were trying to take away his identity. And that is a scary thing. And that is very, very violating and very, very dangerous feeling. To feel as if your identity is being stolen is very dangerous. So, in response, he does kill them. But he kills them after the voices tell him to kill him. He responds with a violent act when the voices tell him to do them. He comes into contact, though, with a character that he doesn't want to kill, and he ignores the voices. And in this book, we get lucky and the voices go away after he ignores the voices. That's not necessarily the case. They could get more violent, they could get more aggressive, they could get more angry, they could become more scary, they could become a bunch of things, especially when you're not on your medication, that could cause a serious lapse in safety and self. So there's that. Then we have our basic Psycho. Now, Psycho is the idea that a man dresses up as his mother and he kills people. Why does he do this? So, there is the TV show Bates Motel, and there is a lot of conversation about trauma and a lot of conversation about the past and abuse and systematic problems that are done to this child by his mother and stepfather. And there is a tight bond between the mother and son that in death becomes problematic because the mother dies, and the son takes on her personality. Why does he do this? Well, arguably, we could say that it's for a safety measure. It becomes a protector. It becomes the person who tells him what to do. Would someone with DID take on the personality of another person just to pretend safety? It's possible. It's not like 100% gonna happen, but it is possible. So he takes on the persona of his mother, who takes on the protector role, and he ends up watching a young girl shower, which stirs up emotions within his loins, and those feelings of arousal are inexcusable and dangerous to this character. So what happens is he switches, and he becomes the mother character, and he murders her because she is now a danger and a threat to him, because she is stirring up his loins and making him think things that he is not supposed to think, and causing him to have an emotional response to a situation that he shouldn't be having an emotional response to. So she caused danger. She caused a problem within the system. She caused something that formulated an idea that there was a viable threat to his safety. And so he killed her. Shirley Jackson's The Nest. This is one of the most accurate depictions of DID I have ever come into contact with, except for the murder. And the murder really upsets me because I think this could have been a great and brilliant book without the murder. But it wouldn't have been a Shirley Jackson novel without the murder, because Shirley Jackson is dark and twisted and really had a point to make where she was trying very hard to represent the idea of women and the many roles that they have to take on, and the idea of problematic relationships between a mother and daughter, and ta-da, we have The Bird's Nest. This does include matricide. So what happens in this book is the mother neglects and abuses the young girl, Elizabeth, and causes her to believe that she would be safer without her mother in the picture. She would be in a situation that was more viable and secure for herself if her mother was not in the picture. So what does she do? She kills her mother. She kills her mother because her mother is causing a viable threat and causing her to believe that she is less than she is, and is causing the rift between systems. Arguably, the mother is the initial trauma provider and makes it so that the splits occur initially, which would be one of the reasons that she would be the prime target, as she would have been the abuser, which would have caused a more basic trigger. So there's that. Then we have Dennis Lehane's Shutter Island. Now, this one, again, it's not as cut and dry as the others. It is much less focused on the mental health aspect, even though it does take place on an asylum. It is really focused on the mystery of this man and who he is and what he's doing here and what's going on the island, and it's just all mixed up into each other. But, and I'm going to ruin the movie as well as the book. So, the main character murders his wife because she murders his children. Is that a violent act, or is he trying to put... Because the argument is that his wife is also mentally ill. So, is he trying to put her out of her misery? Is he making a conscious decision? Is he understanding his actions? Or is he just making a rash decision in a moment of fear and anger that causes him to have an emotional breakdown, which causes him to split into a situation where his reality becomes shot and he starts living in a false reality where his wife died in a fire versus was murdered by himself. This is a really interesting story about whether or not a person should be allowed to live as a monster or be changed into a lesser person because of their violent acts. It does talk about lobotomies and the experience of a person after a lobotomy, sort of. So this one's a darker story in that it really kind of dives into the idea of, should we allow people with these mental health issues that are potentially violent to roam about the world? That's a really unfair question. Lobotomies are completely immoral, in my opinion. I don't think a person should ever have to suffer a lobotomy. I think that that is a really terrible fate and one of the worst things that could ever happen to a person. They lose identity, they lose sense of self, they lose safety, they lose everything, including their sanity, and they revert back to this state of nothing. Is that a fair response to violent acts? I don't think so. I think that treatment is the only option, which would involve lots of therapy and medication. And in this case, the man is rejecting therapy and rejecting medication because he believes that he is a officer of the law and that he is trying to find out what is happening on this island. And he has falsified his reality into a situation where he believes that he is the hero of the story. But does that mean that he's a dangerous creature who should be lobotomized? I wouldn't say so. I would say that there needs to be more treatment and more trying. Even though I know that it's hard to give the correct amount of attention to each inmate, as it is an inmate situation because they are on a prison asylum for the most hardened criminals with mental health issues, basically. It's... come on. There's so many feelings I have about that book. So, those are the 4 books. That is my discussion on mental health and murder. And I hope that you guys like this. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, go ahead and click that subscribe button. I will see you all in my next video, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.